Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really interesting and kind of provocative take on the AI boom. It suggests that while this whole thing looks and feels like a classic tech bubble, the reason it might not pop, well, that might be even scarier than the crash itself.
Okay, so let's get right into it. This is the question on everyone's mind, right? Are we just living through 1999 all over again? You've got these insane valuations, these huge promises about changing the world. I mean, it feels exactly like the dot-com bubble. And as we're about to see, the parallels, they're pretty undeniable. So first up, let's really lean into that feeling of déjà vu. We're going to look at just how similar today's AI craze is to the dot-com era and why so many people are convinced it's all about to come crashing down.
I mean, just look at this. The patterns are almost a perfect mirror image. Both times you have a technology that promises to change everything. You've got valuations that are just astronomical, completely disconnected from reality, and all of it is fueled by massive amounts of debt. But here's the real kicker. In both cases, there's almost no actual profit to be found, not even with the biggest names in the game.
Yeah, let's talk about this number for a second. $15 billion. That's not a company's valuation? No. That's the projected loss for OpenAI in 2026. Think about that. This isn't some tiny startup in a garage. Even with money pouring in, the cost of running these AI models is so ridiculously high that they are just burning through cash like there's no tomorrow. So here's the lesson from history, right? Even if the technology is the real deal, that doesn't mean the crazy valuations are justified. The dot-com crash didn't prove the internet was a failure. It just proved that investors had gotten way, way ahead of themselves. And if history repeats itself, we could be looking at a really painful correction, even for the companies that end up dominating in the long run.
Okay, but this is where the story gets really interesting. This is the big twist. What if the old rules just don't apply anymore? What if this bubble isn't allowed to burst?
This quote right here changes the entire game. Suddenly, we're not talking about a simple market fad anymore. We're talking about a geopolitical showdown. The stakes aren't just about who has the biggest market cap, they're about who controls the future, literally.
And what that means is that AI is no longer just a business proposition. For countries like the US and China, this is now a matter of national security. It's a strategic battle, and losing this race, well, that's just not an option. They will do whatever it takes to make sure their side comes out on top.
You know, when the dot-com bubble popped, it was painful, but in a way, it was healthy. It kind of cleared out all the junk and let the strong companies like Amazon and Google really thrive. But this time, that's not going to happen. This time, governments are going to step in. They're going to prop up their chosen national champions to make sure they win this race, no matter what their balance sheets look like. So what happens when you stop the market from doing its thing, when you don't let it correct itself? Well, you get something that looks powerful on the surface, but is actually creating a massive, dangerous distortion. You get an economy on steroids. And this steroid analogy is absolutely perfect for understanding what's going on. You get the initial injection, right? That's the government money pouring into these AI companies. Then you get the gain. These companies look unbelievably strong. They're outperforming everyone. But just like with real steroids, all that artificial strength is poisoning the system. And the long-term side effects, we're talking the economic equivalent of total organ failure, are just waiting to show up. And really, this all comes down to the timeline. In the short term, say the next 1 to 5 years, everything's going to look great. The chosen companies will look like geniuses. But what's really happening is that we're planting the seeds for a future crisis. We're creating these huge, inefficient companies and starving out the next wave of innovators. And that kind of systemic damage might not become obvious for 5, 10, maybe even 20 years. Now, just to be clear, this isn't some far-off theory. This is happening right now, in real time. We can literally see the battle lines being drawn between the world's two biggest superpowers. Both of them are injecting the steroids. Okay, get this. This quote comes from an expert inside China's tech world, and it's basically a bombshell. He's admitting they're falling behind, and the reason is fascinating. He says US companies like OpenAI can throw all their resources at pure next-level research, while Chinese firms are so busy just trying to keep up with customer demand that they can't innovate at the same pace. But, and this is a huge but, don't think for a second this means China is just going to roll over and give up. No way. It's the exact opposite.
This kind of analysis is what lights a fire under the Chinese government. It makes them even more motivated to double down and pour state funding into their own companies to close that gap, whatever the cost. And what about the US response? Well, they're rolling out their own heavy artillery. And check out the name, the Office of Strategic Capital. Not strategic thinking, but strategic capital. Their entire job is to turn America's financial might into a weapon for this geopolitical fight. And let's be really clear about what this is. This isn't just some think tank. This is a massive organized shift away from free market principles and towards state-directed industrial policy. The US is literally aiming its financial firepower, using the government to funnel money into the sectors it believes are essential to winning the tech war against China. So, after all that, where does this leave us? If you're an investor or just anyone trying to figure out what the heck is going on, what do? Well, the simple answer is that the rules of the game have completely changed. The old playbook is basically out the window. It used to be about finding a company with a solid business model, one that worked on a spreadsheet. Now, the most important question you have to ask is this company aligned with the national interest? Because in the short term, at least, the winners are going to be the ones who know how to follow the government's money. And that leaves us with this final massive question. When you have two global superpowers pumping their economies full of steroids, each one desperate to win this tech race, what does that do to the rest of the world, to the global economy? In a contest like this, one that's driven by state power instead of market logic, is it possible for anyone to truly win in the end? Honestly, the answer to that is going to define the next decade for all of us.